Hi, good morning, Sister Martha
Good
Ann.
morning, Seth. Great to see you.
It is great to see you. I'm so excited to be doing this with you this morning. We have been talking about getting together and having this conversation about the amazing life that you've led. And I think for the people watching this, everyone understands what an icon you have been at
Come on
Mission
now.
Hospital over the years. And I just want to spend a little bit more time with you learning about your life. And I thought one of the things that I would start with is, where were you born? I think people would be interested in that. And then what are your earliest memories of your childhood? Tell us a little bit about yourself as a real young person.
Well, I was born in Wyoming, in Rawlins, Wyoming, and then we moved to a little Casper, and then ended up in a little town called Basin. I was there for maybe until I was 6, and then we moved to California. And then I went back for 2 years of high school to this little town, and there were not even 100 students in our high school. So it was really small. And growing up and coming from California was a big change. But I love the seasons, and I worked for a little public library, and we used to go out to all the little surrounding areas and take the books and that was fun. And I thought, maybe I want to be a librarian, but I'm glad that didn't work out.
Well, tell me how you got back to Wyoming then for those couple years
Well, my
of high school.
father died when we came back to California, and we living in San Diego. And my father died when I was in the 8th grade. And my mother I have a brother, and wanted to go back and get some points settled to be sure that my father had invested in some properties, and she wanted to be sure that they were going to be secure.
So you find yourself graduating high school in Wyoming.
No, I didn't graduate from high school. I went 2 years.
And then came back to California?
And then came back to California, finished high school in San Diego. But I had met the Sisters of St. Joseph in elementary school at Sacred Heart in San Diego, and went from the 4th to the 8th grade there. And that stayed with me. I thought, I like boys. I like dancing. Every weekend we'd be.
We'll get into the dancing conversation here shortly.
Right. But anyway, there was something about the sisters that attracted me. They loved us. We had a good time in school. I always thought, well, these women are pretty good. But then I didn't think about it. It dropped out.
Yeah.
But then after I graduated from high school, I was going to go to San Diego State College. And I was a camp counselor up at Bass Lake with a good friend of mine. We were sitting out there in the lake and kind of diving in and out of the boat and having a wonderful time. And I said to her, Frances, I think I'm going to enter the Sisters of St. Joseph. And she said, you are? And I said, yes, because if I don't, I will always regret it. If I don't like it, I'll come back.
So are you 18 at this time?
I was 18.
18 years old.
18 years old.
So a young woman, and you decide you're
yeah.
going to go into the sisterhood.
Yeah. And I wrote to the Mother General, and that's what we call the Superior. And she said, of course, please come and join us. And 70 years later,
that's been a pretty good run.
Never looked back.
So you're 18 years old. You decide to go and join the sisters. Tell me about San Diego at this time. So, being new to California, I've only been to San Diego a couple times in the last few years. But tell me, what was San Diego like back then?
Well, it was a Navy town, and it hadn't yet developed into a big resort area, which it is now. But it was a great place to grow up. I can remember going to, without a date or something, going to a dance on a Saturday night and coming home on the streetcar and walking to my home and never thinking about, is this safe? Mm-hmm. You could never do that now. And so then we had a Catholic youth organization, and it was just Tons of fun. We would go to the beach. We would, I worked in the dime store for a little change, and that was my first experience with working. Well, I had worked in Wyoming in the public library, but it was, and I went to all Catholic schools, and except for the 2 years in Wyoming, and really enjoyed it. It was a great place to grow up.
So faith was a big part of your life, it sounds like, growing up.
Oh, yes,
always.
yes.
And so you contact the Mother General, and she says, yes, of course, we'd love you to come and join us. So walk us through what then the next handful of years are like in your life.
Okay, so I come up to Orange, and we had, it was really kind very, we had like $60 was our dowry. It was so inexpensive. And then we brought, our Bible. No, we didn't even bring the Bible. We just brought a very few things. And then we were in the novitiate for 3 years. First of all, you're a postulant. That was from the Latin, you're postulating to be a member of this congregation. And then you take the habit, because I was, in those days we were wearing the habit. And you wore the white veil, indicating that you were a novice. And then at the end of that period of time, you made your first vows. And you renewed those for 5 years until the community was certain, and you were certain, that this was what you wanted to do with your life. And during those years, I taught elementary school. The first year was absolutely chaotic. I had no discipline in the little kids. They were delightful, but they sure were a handful. The second year was better. I had a little bit more control. By the third year, I was considered an expert. and they were fun. You prepared them for First Holy Communion. They were like putty in your hands.
Yeah.
They were so precious. And then I was asked to, I hadn't yet finished my bachelor's degree, was doing it in summers and in part-time. So I was asked by the community to go up to Dominican College in San Rafael and complete my degree, which I did in a year. And then I came back, and I taught at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana. Those were great years. The school was it was still in its infancy, but a great school. Coach Curry was the football coach, and if you had a student in class that was not doing well and you gave them a failing grade, they would not play on the football team. So it was pretty rigorous. And those were fun years. I loved every year that I was there. And then I got transferred. I had made my final vows, and I got transferred to San Diego, which was my hometown. And that was great because my mother then was older, and it gave me a chance to spend more time with her. And I taught there at the local, it was Rosary High School, it was called then, it's now closed. And I taught there for 2 years, and that was a wonderful experience. And then the Mother General came one time to visit us, and she said, "Now, dear," that's just kind of the way she talked.
This is a setup, right away, right? She's starting with "Now, dear," and you're going to get asked to do something.
We want to send you to Catholic University to get your PhD. Well, I could have dropped dead.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave Rosary. I was so happy there. But, of course, it's like the Army, you don't say no. You go where you're assigned. Well, in some ways, that was probably one of the most liberating experiences of my life. It was in the 60s, and it was lots going on in the church as well as in society. Kennedy was assassinated while I was there, and in Congress, I went to the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, all of the times that I had free, or I would go to Congress. So I just became a junkie in a way.
Wow.
And it was a marvelous experience for me. So I studied American history, and that was the laboratory, being there in Washington, D.C. So following that, about 5 years of my study, then this was also the time of Vatican II, which was the call of Pope John the 23rd. Let's open the windows to the world. Get some fresh air in here. We need to make a lot of changes. Well, one of the big changes that we made was the fact that we would no longer wear the habit. And for us...
Was that a good or a bad thing?
Well, I was chafing at the bit. I really, especially being in Washington, it's hot in the summer, humid, and wearing, it was not a happy time to be wearing the habit, although I always loved it. But then I was glad that, so we changed. But then, of course, you had to worry about your hair. And we had a limited amount of money to, get some outfits. So that was, it was an interesting time. But there's also a lot of things going on in the church. For instance, our life before had been rather monastic, all get up at the same time, go in silence to the chapel, eat your meals, then you would go for your ministry. All of that changed. And so it was a different horarium. Everybody had a different schedule. Your life was very different. So much of that kind of collective type of life changed.
And were you excited about that
yes,
at the time?
Oh,
Some
yes.
of that sounds like the structure that you were in, kind of went away.
It went from being semi-monastic to much more open and free. And really that was needed at the time. So I welcomed it all.
You talk about, you say going and doing your ministry. So what were you doing during that time?
I was teaching. Well, we had our college at Orange, and so when I came back from getting my doctorate, I was teaching there at Orange. And then we affiliated with Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. And so when I went up there to the campus and taught there for 10 years. And another thing comes along, and I'm elected to our leadership council, which is a 5-person group that more or less conducts, carries on the life of the congregation in terms of leadership. So I did that for 2 terms of 10 years.
And how did you like it?
Yeah.
Loaded question, right?
I used to tell the sisters, there was a song that said, "Take this job and shove it." and for a while, really, that was, it wasn't easy.
No, it's not easy being a leader.
This was a time also of great challenge in the church. A lot of sisters leaving the community. They figured that with some of them, with the changes, they felt, I don't need to be a sister anymore. I never felt that way, but many of them did, and so it was chaotic. We had schools closing. We didn't have the sisters to maintain them, so it was a tough time.
So at this kind of point, you're back. You're teaching. Is the congregation shrinking?
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
And what's
yes.
the number getting down to compared to?
Well, we
when
were
you joined?
500, then maybe 400, 300. So it was shrinking, and we didn't. We used to have these groups of young women coming out of high school. Well, now we say, no, you're too young. You need to have some experience. You need to finish school, have some life experience, and so we were encouraging young women. When I entered the community, I hadn't had that. And we think that's better, so that the women that were coming in were more mature.
So you're in a leadership position, you do 2 terms.
And
congregation shrinking. You're thinking about take this job and shove it.
Well, not all the time.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
And it was a great group of women that I worked with. We formed bonds and really came to love one another. But at the end of that time, I figured, I'd been out of academia for almost 10 years. Where would I be hired? I hadn't published. I hadn't, done anything that a college professor did. So this was the time when another big change was coming, and that was in healthcare. We had a number of our hospitals that were all separately incorporated, and many of the Catholic hospitals, they were forming systems. And we thought to ourselves, that's probably what we need to start doing. So the last couple of years of my leadership were spent largely in helping this develop. So looking at, we had, consultants come in and help us. And not all of our CEOs were happy about this because they felt, oh, we're going to lose some of our autonomy. It's going to be more, and it's true. But so when I finished my term, I thought to myself, I think I want to go into healthcare. It's exciting. It's a field that I really feel so much can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
and about what time is this, or what year is this?
This is now, let me see, this is in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was still, young enough and vigorous enough to want to take on that challenge. So I was... The very first position that I had was actually outside of our system. It was helping the Adrian sisters. They had two hospitals, one in Santa Cruz and the other one in Henderson, Nevada, and wanted us to look at them and help them join a Catholic healthcare system. Well, they looked, and so I was kind of a facilitator in that process, which was new for me, and I really enjoyed it. I worked up in Oakland. And they decided not to go with us. They decided to go with which is now Dignity. But after that, then, I was assigned to Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital in the wine country, which was, I really became kind of a wine snob, because you have... you're surrounded by all of these vintners, and they're on your board, and you're going to these parties, and so it was fun. And Santa Rosa is beautiful. It's a lovely area, and then so I did that for 5 years, and then we purchased a hospital down in Southern California. Mission Hospital. We had St. Joe's in Orange, we had St. Jude in Fullerton in the northern part, and they'd always wanted a hospital in this area. So they purchased Mission Hospital.
And this is close to home for you,
this is,
right?
Yes, and so now let me see where my dates are. This was 1994. I went to Mission, and I was there for 25 years. And
so 1994, is that what you said?
1990, I think I'm right, 1994, and then I retired in 2019. How many years?
What was Mission Hospital like in 1994? My office is in the pavilion, so I have a sense of what it's like, the original building.
Well, it was a thriving hospital. It was doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
It had been physician owned, and it did not have, let's say, a certain. There were some values, but not. There wasn't really a kind of an identity. So I remember, and we would have these big meetings, and I'd go in and be talking about Sisters of St. Joseph and the values. At that time, the four: dignity, service, excellence, and justice. And they just kind of absorbed it. It was like, this is great, come on, give us more. And then we established the spiritual care department. They had had a part-time chaplain, but now that became a full-time department, and attracting a priest as well as chaplains who would minister to the patients. And then we developed, I remember this, it was kind of an interesting, I said, how am I going to get the different departments acclimated to the value? So I had each unit, each department develop their own mission statement and how they would carry out those four core values. And I see, and even today, I think, posted in some of those areas, they still have that. And that was a good exercise. I think it helped them kind of, how do we carry out dignity? Justice, excellence. So it was good.
So that seems like a big undertaking, right? You're coming into a hospital that hasn't been in Catholic healthcare.
Right.
You're talking about the mission, vision, values. I love the book from the sisters, St. Joseph, the bold and courageous
Yes,
love.
yes.
And that formation piece of working in Catholic healthcare continues to be really important, not just within St. Joseph Healthcare, but now within Providence.
Exactly.
Formation is a big part of what we do.
Exactly.
You're
How
ta-
do
you've
you
talked-
carry on? How do you carry that on?
That's right.
And pass it on.
So tell me about how you were part of, you've given us a little insight here in kind of the department mission statement, but how do you bring formation to a hospital that hasn't been a secular hospital historically? I mean, was that difficult to do and get people enthused about the medical staff and frontline caregivers?
I found it so welcoming. It was as though, oh, this is great. And then there were people like Cindy Mueller, who was in charge of it. And she was just soaking it up. And I thought, hey, there's the leader right there. I mean, there were so many people like that. They were just anxious, and they identified they weren't Catholic. Well, some of them were, but oftentimes they were not. But they said, yeah. And then when we developed our Care for the Poor, 10% of a bottom line that would go to outreach programs. And then when we began, we had started with the Family Resource Center, then the Camino Health Center. They could see evidence, and then that even the way that we cared for patients, for instance, that couldn't pay, and how did we treat them? And so we would care for them, that we give them financial assistance. So they began to see, oh, these are all good things. I remember one physician, it was funny, he came in to me, because that's when we put the crosses in each room. And I was wondering, what kind of feedback we might get. And he came in, and he was not Catholic, and he said, well, sister, why aren't these crucifixes? These are just crosses. And I said, well, we just thought that the cross was perhaps more meaningful for more people than, but I thought that was kind of interesting that he would be proposing that we would have the crucifix instead of just the cross. But overall, there were, a few little pushbacks, but overall, I would say very limited.
So I want to just ask a couple questions around the poor and the vulnerable, and you talked about the Care for the Poor Fund. I tell people all the time, one of the most special things about working in Catholic healthcare is we run towards those that have the greatest need, right? While many other people in healthcare are trying to figure out how to minimize, that group of people in our community. That seems like a big change, going from a for-profit, physician-owned, company or hospital to now having that be part of the culture. Do you have a story or a recollection of something that stood out to you in your time at Mission Hospital early on, taking care of the poor and vulnerable?
Well, I remember that when we were not yet affiliated with Camino, and Art Bircher, who was a well-known developer in the area, came to me and he said, sister, we have this clinic in San Juan that really needs help. It's financially failing, and can the hospital take it over? And I said, oh yeah, we'll do that. And I think visibly that was probably the most significant addition, because it was something that kind of stood out, that this hospital was sponsoring and taking care of the underserved in this clinic. And now now it's a federally qualified health center, and it's
amazing.
It's amazing. I don't know if you've had an opportunity yet to see the new.
I haven't. I was gone for the ribbon cutting down in San Clemente, but I hear it's incredible. I have to get down there.
It is just beautiful. It's really a place that you would go in and think. And one of the staff said this: our patients deserve it, because oftentimes they're getting the least, and for them this is such a beautiful place, so well equipped. I just when I saw it, it just made me feels so good to think that we had a role to play in that.
It's a really special place, and I think a big part of our history.
Yeah.
So you get through the 90s. Now we're in the 2000s. Now tell me, are you on the administrative team at this point?
Yes, yes.
The entire time you're kind of working with the chief executive
Yes,
and the other
yes.
people on the executive
And
team.
then, well, early in then it was, kind of time and then we were having other staff come on and help in this formation. And identified Cindy Mueller. She had been at the hospital there for probably 30 years and was a real leader. And I said, Cindy, would you be interested in this position as the VP, what was called that then, VP of sponsorship? And she said, yes, I would be. And so she was my successor. And of course, took over and just achieved and went on to, really very significant achievements at Mission.
Well, you've seen a lot of construction on the campus over the years too.
Right.
Tower 1, Tower
Yes,
2.
yes.
What was it like being around on the campus when those things were being built? I mean, it had to be an exciting time.
Oh, it was.
For everyone.
It was. It was an exciting time. And I remember we kept saying, and now, of course, there's always another need. We have ORs. And then the Cancer Center, as a standalone, that was a huge achievement. And that began, years ago in terms. And I think, we've been able to really empower our community in terms of philanthropy. I think that's been, to see giving as a part of our ministry. We've really been blessed.
So philanthropy is a huge part of everything that we do now,
yes.
especially I think as healthcare becomes more challenging to access dollars to do these big
yes.
projects. We, of course, are in a big health system, 50 other hospitals competing for those same resources. Thinking about the Leonard Cancer Institute that opened now a year and a half ago, tell me about the process, and you got to be on that team, right? Helping develop the Cancer Center. Tell me a little bit about that process and anything that stood out to you. I had an opportunity to be at the Quant Chapel dedication.
Oh, yes, yes.
This past week.
Yeah. Well, he credits me with that, but I really don't. I think I just said, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a chapeler? But anyway.
Well, when a sister whispers in your ear.
I didn't.
Jim, as a devout Catholic, I think took that pretty seriously.
No, but one of the things I think truly was the fact that people wanted something. They didn't want to have to go up to Los Angeles. They didn't want to have to journey, up to, although there are fine institutions. But I think it was the fact of having it local. And we had such fine physicians that joined with us in this effort.
Well, we've talked a lot about your career and healthcare. Let's talk a little bit about just kind of the world, your lens on what's going on in the world. Before the camera started rolling, we talked a little bit about climate change. I'd love your kind of 2 cents on that, and just things in our society that you think healthcare is going to be faced with.
I think one of the things that our community is very involved in is social justice. How are we caring for the underserved? And I love Pope Francis. I think his message is, we care for everybody, but especially those who are underserved. And that's
who we are.
That's who we are. That's who we are. And I think we've really tried to live that out. And we've had wonderful, sponsors and people that have helped us do that.
What do you think the biggest challenge we're going to be faced with here in the years to come in Catholic healthcare?
Well, maintaining forming leadership. We have to be conscious of the bottom line. We can't survive if we don't have a positive bottom line. But that can't be the sole reason for our existence. That's not who we are. And so how do we maintain that balance so that we have, certainly the effort to sustain, but also to continue to form our staff, to enable these programs that are, they're not cost effective. I mean, they're draining, but in some ways, when you think of Camino, we're keeping patients out of the ER. So that's certainly a help for the hospital. But going forward, the corporate mentality can creep in. And I think that's something we always have to be, we can't forget our roots. Where did we come from? And we started with, 60 cents. Well, that's apocryphal. Mm-hmm. Started with 60 cents, and then cared for the people in the throes of the
Spanish flu.
Yeah, the Spanish flu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so I love stories, and I love history. And I think the sisters of St. Joseph of Orange,
and the Providence
sisters have incredible stories. Mm-hmm. Is there a story linked to our heritage that you think about often, or that one that inspires you or really resonates with you? I mean, there's so many of them, great stories of the sisters, whether it was fighting the Spanish flu or building a school, or going out to those most in need. Is there a favorite story that you have?
Oh,
Sister
my
Martha
goodness.
Ann? I know it's hard to pick.
I'd be hard-pressed to just find one. I guess when I think about it, the courage of Mother Bernard and those women coming from Chicago, and they kind of thought it was going to be the land of plenty and sunshine and oranges, and Eureka is not exactly that. Mm-hmm. Eureka is kind of off the beaten track, and it's foggy and it's isolated, and yet they endured, and they, had the courage to. They sold property in fact, that was the down payment of the hospital. One of the sisters came with the dowry of some property, which they sold, and were able then to put the down payment on the hospital. But so there are a lot of stories but coming to mind, but I can't pull one out. Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the sisterhood, what's the future hold for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange?
Fewer sisters. Mm-hmm. I think we start in France. We started with 6, and I think big numbers can obfuscate or kind of hide. I think there'll always be the need for religious life, mm-hmm. in some way or another. I don't think it's going to be the dominant form it was when I entered the community, and there were many of us. I think that was a temporary thing. I don't think we're going to return to that. I think women today, there are so many avenues that they can pursue. So to become a religious woman, you really have to feel that call, and God can take you, and He doesn't let go of you. But I think that it will continue, and I think there'll be a lot more, like collaboration, Providence Sisters, Mercy Sisters. I think there'll be probably more and more of that kind of collaboration, not distinct from one another, so that we maybe in time we're all kind of one family. Mm-hmm. It could be.
So Catholic healthcare has been really interesting over the last 10 years as you watch these systems come together. How hard of a choice was that for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange and St. Joseph Health coming together with Providence? I mean, there's certainly a kind of a discernment, if you will, process.
Well, it was. We saw it as a benefit but we had to give up. We gave up our name.
Yeah.
We gave up things that were very dear to us, but we saw it for the greater good. Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. one of the things we talk about in new caregiver orientation all the time is our heritage. Is there a message that you'd like to share with new caregivers that are joining Mission Hospital from your perspective on what it's like to
I
work
guess
there?
I would like to tell them that this is a great place to work. I think if you give the effort, your efforts will be rewarded, that there's a mission that's bigger than yourself, and to give yourself to it, I think enlarges your own life, certainly, and it can give you impetus for, how do you, is it just for a paycheck? Are you coming here for, this is a vocation for you.
To serve.
To serve.
I love that. Thank you. Now I want to get on a fun topic here.
Okay, these are not fun topics.
Well, this is incredibly interesting, but I do want to talk about dancing. You referenced dancing
yes,
a couple
yes.
times, and I think everyone within the Mission family at large knows that Sister Martha Ann likes to dance. Has that always been part of who you are? Did you dance as a child and
yes.
all the way through your life?
I remember even before I went to school, we had some kind of a dancing class, and I won first prize for tap dancing. I still remember the picture my mother had of me in this I was all rouged up in this little outfit, and I got first place. No, it was all, the Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, I don't know if you had it in Wisconsin growing up. But anyway, that was when young people got together. We'd have a dance every Friday night. You need a date.
Yeah.
You just came and you danced, and it was just fun.
So usually people that like to dance really like music.
Oh.
Do you have a particular type of music that you really enjoy that you like to put on that
Well,
makes you happy?
I like the classics. I'm not too much into today's music. I don't find it very appealing, not to me, and I'm old-fashioned.
And it's my understanding you like mariachi music as well.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's fun.
I know we got to celebrate your birthday here during the
That-
pandemic with the drive-by birthday party.
That was so much fun. I just loved it. I couldn't believe it. We were sitting here in the dining room having lunch, and Pat Atala was here, and another sister friend, and somebody said, now it's time to come outside. And I said, I'm kind of sleepy. I'd like to take a little nap. And they said, oh, no, not now. So we go outside, and here's this huge kind of a arc of balloons and a music, and then these cars start coming by. Well, it was too much. That was a highlight of my life, I think.
Well, and I think it was incredible to participate in. What overwhelmed me is we received this message that we were going to celebrate your birthday, and of course our entire executive team wanted to participate, wanted to know when it was. And then we were going to meet over at this garden center here in Dana Point or in San Juan. And I couldn't believe how many people were there. I mean, and I'm sure your neighbors weren't exactly thrilled with like the 100 cars going through the neighborhood.
Well, no, they were all out. They what's going on? What's going on? They were all interested in what was happening.
So it sounds like that's one of your favorite memories that you've had.
Oh, that is, without a doubt. And the wonderful people that I've worked with at Mission, it's really dedicated. They were making good salaries, or some of them not so much. But some of the people that I really enjoy, the people in EVS and nutritional care, they're some of my buddies that I would see every day, for lunch. And I don't know if you know Roman. He's yeah, but he's also a great dancer. I remember.
No wonder you like him.
Well, right. At one of the employee banquets, we had such a good time dancing. So if you see him, be sure to say hi.
I will say hi. We talk a lot about faith, and we talk a lot about hope for the future. Is there something that you hope for the future of Mission Hospital and the community that we serve?
I hope that we never lose that sense of mission and of camaraderie. I think one of the it's we had a lot of fun. And it wasn't like drudgery coming to work every day. We had a lot of fun. I hope that spirit can remain and grow.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So you were recently doing a bunch of travel, and I know you went to Hawaii, you went to Bryce Canyon. Tell us about your latest trips and any of the highlights you want to share.
Well, we went to Zion as well as Bryce. Beautiful parks. And it was at Easter, so they were all pretty crowded. But we had a wonderful time and took lots and lots of pictures. And then the trip to Hawaii, though, was really kind of the icing on the cake. We just had such a good day. It was right on Waikiki Beach. We had a condo. Twee was able to find it on Priceline, but it was just, it was beautiful. The sunsets were so beautiful. You just felt so, I always felt Hawaii, and California is beautiful, but Hawaii has a sense of, it's different. And the greenery, we went to some of the beaches that you think you were way off in the South Pacific someplace. It was just beautiful. And thanks to the hospital for their generosity that I was able to do that.
Oh, that's the easy part. You've given a lifetime of work to our patients and our caregivers.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful. I wouldn't take it back in any way.
Sister Martha Ann, this has been, for me, in my 2 years here at Mission Hospital, one of the most enjoyable conversations we've ever got to have. I've got to learn so much about your life, who you are as a person, and all you've done for our ministry. So I want to thank you. I know this interview is something we're going to cherish and be able to share with caregivers and community members and board members, kind of about our history, our legacy, and the challenges that we have in front of us, but how important the work is to continue to live that mission, vision, values that brought you and many other sisters and hospitals and our health system together over time. So thank you for your time this morning.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, we love you. Be good.
Be good.